Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I want to go over the foundation of every single photo that you're going to take with off-camera flash, which is going to be a two-step process. It's going to be step one, expose for the background. That's the setting that you're going to be working in. And then step two, add your flash. I did already make a video going over this in March, but I feel like this is something that bears repeating because it might seem like a simple concept, expose for the background, then add flash, but there's a lot of different things, a lot of aspects that you have to take into consideration. So it makes it pretty difficult to understand, and to even master it, it takes a lot of work. So I wanted to make this video kind of as a part two to that first video. Before I continue though, I do want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community filled with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people alike. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity with Skillshare. There's honestly so much to learn on Skillshare that you guys need to go to the website and check it out yourself. There's classes on photography, cinematography, graphic design, productivity. Honestly, you need to go to the website and check it out for yourself. One class I was looking into recently is called Create a Short Documentary Video Portrait by Elaine McMillan Sheldon. And this class was really interesting because it was really heavy on storytelling. And I feel like I need to get better at storytelling myself. So that's why I wanted to check this class out. And I did learn a lot of tips and tricks regarding storytelling. So hopefully I can implement that into my own work pretty soon. Skillshare was made to learn, so there's never any ads, and they're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and follow where your creativity takes you. If you guys are really interested in trying Skillshare out, you can use my link in the description area below, because the first 1,000 of you to use that link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare so you can start exploring your creativity today. When you guys support the people that support my channel, it allows me to keep making free content. So if you're interested in trying Skillshare out, use the link in the description area below. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is the first example, which is actually from a workshop that I did back in 2019. And I did it step by step, the process of exposing for the ambient, then adding flash. So let me go ahead and just walk through that with you guys right now. As you can see on the top right, you can see that the settings are ISO 100, f1.4 at 1/5000th of a second. And I kind of guessed at the settings because I know that since it was bright out, I would need a fast shutter speed with my wide aperture and my low ISO. But let's say, for example, you actually wanted the shot to be brighter. Well, then the different ways that you can brighten up the exposure is going to be 3 different ways. You can either raise the ISO, you can widen the aperture, which is not possible for this shot, or you can slow down the shutter speed. Since I was already at my max aperture of f1.4, I can't open it any wider. There's just a limit to that lens. But I could raise the ISO if I wanted a brighter exposure, or slow down the shutter speed. But again, this is an example if you wanted to brighten the image, and I actually want to do the exact opposite. I want to darken it a little bit because I feel like the highlights of the sky and the light that's hitting her face is a little bit too strong. So that's pretty much exactly what I did in this very next shot here, right there. I actually raised the shutter speed from 1/5000th of a second to 1/8000th of a second. And then I lowered my ISO from ISO 100 to ISO 50. That ended up giving me this exposure on the screen right here. And after I took this shot, then I decided to add flash. But as you can see on the screen, the light was a little bit too strong. It's a little too bright on her face. So all you have to do when that happens is just lower the output of your light. And that's exactly what I did, which ended up with this exposure right here. After I took this shot though, I did want to go ahead and move the lighting because I didn't really like how the light was falling on her face and the shadow position. So I did move it a little bit to a different position. But what I was trying to keep in mind throughout the whole time I was moving the light was I didn't want to move the light further away or move it closer, because that is going to affect how strong the light is going to be hitting her face. If I move it further away, then I would need to increase the power of my strobe. And if I moved it even closer, then it would become too strong, and I would need to reduce the power of my strobe. So keeping the distance in mind, I moved the light to camera left, and I took this shot here, but I didn't really like the fact that I couldn't see any catch lights in her eye, so I moved it to a different position, which is this one right here, and I did like how the light was looking, and there is still some catch lights in the eye. I just needed to brighten those eyes a little bit in post, and then I would get the results that I wanted. After I took this shot, I decided to get just one more shot to see how it would look like, so I got a little bit further back, and then I got this shot here, and I was really happy with it, and then I took a behind the scenes for you guys, so you guys can see exactly where the light was positioned and the environment that I was working in. And again, what you're seeing on the screen right now is how the shot would look like without the flash on. Here's another example of me exposing for the ambient, then adding flash. I'm at ISO 200 f1.4 at 1/125th of a second. And the reason why I have those settings is because I actually had a 6-stop ND filter on my lens. So otherwise I would be at different settings, but keep that in mind. 6 stops darker would be maybe something like ISO 50 at maybe 1/4000th of a second. I'm gonna guess there, if I didn't have that 6-stop ND filter. The main reason why I wanted to show you guys this example though is because I actually have a rim light on here, which is not really common in my work. So this is how I would expose for the ambient. And then here is the main light on. And then I have a rim light here, kind of lighting her hair and a little bit of her leg and her arm. And that's pretty much exposing for the ambient and then adding flash. But let's say, for example, that the rim light was a little bit too strong, it was too bright, then I would go ahead and just reduce the power of the light. Again, that's pretty much always going to be an option. You can reduce the power of the strobe or increase it depending on how the shot looks like. If it was too bright on the main light, then again, I would just reduce it. Or if it was too dark on the main light, then I would increase it. Don't be afraid to change the power of your strobe. I had actually taken this shot here on the screen, which is a little bit darker. I had thought I wanted this background to look like that, a little bit dark, but then I felt like it was too dark, so I had to adjust my settings. So right now I'm at ISO 100 f1.4 1/200th of a second, and the 3 ways again to increase the ambient light to brighten up the background is to widen the aperture, slow down the shutter speed, or raise the ISO. Since I'm maxed out on my aperture, I then thought, okay, let me just increase the ISO just a little bit, 1 stop from ISO 100 to ISO 200, and then reduce the shutter speed from 1/200th of a second to 1/125th. And that resulted in the ambient looking from here to here, which is much brighter. Again, you guys should always expose for the ambient first and then add your flashes one by one if you have multiple lights. And I want to go ahead and show you guys a bad example of me not doing that. I guess it's a good example of what you shouldn't do and show you guys exactly why it threw me off. For this photo shoot, I actually shot with my friend Joe, and I believe he was taking pictures, but I just snuck in a random shot while he was changing his lens. And what you're seeing on the screen is pretty much an example of what I didn't want. And you'll see how I did want the photo to look like in a quick second. But for this shot here, I feel like the background is too dark, and I feel like the rim light is a little too bright, and the main light is actually fine. But again, this is not what I wanted, so I needed to make some adjustments. When it did become my turn, I did expose for the ambient first, which is what you're seeing on the screen right here. And you can see that the exposure is much brighter than the previous shot. I'm now at ISO 100 at 1/100th of a second f1.4, and previously I was a stop darker at 1/200th of a second. Although I did the very first step correctly, which is exposing for the ambient, when I added the flashes, I added both of them on at the same time, and then I was adjusting them at the same time and moving them around at the same time, and it just became so complicated. So let me go ahead and show you guys exactly what I mean. For this shot here, I didn't really like how either of the lights looked like, and what I should have done was just turn off one of the lights, the rim light preferably, and focus on the main light, and then turn on the rim light and focus on that one second. But what I did again was just turn them both on and then adjust them both at the same time. So for this light, what I felt was that the rim light was too much to the side of her. I usually like it a little bit toward the back, and then I felt like the main light was a little bit too far away, so I brought it in closer. So this is before I did that, but then after I did those adjustments I just described, I got this photo here. The power of both the strobes were exactly the same, so you can see that from this shot here and this one here that the exposure of the strobe was stronger because it's closer, and you can see from this photo to this photo how the rim light was more to the side and there's more shadow on the side defining her in this photo. Again, I was moving both these lights at the same time when you should just focus on one. But after I took this shot, I thought the rim light looks good now. I'll leave it exactly how it is, but I do want the main light to be a little bit higher. So after I took this photo, I raised that main light and it gave me this shot. I did like this position, but I felt like the light was a little bit too dark, so I increased it just a little bit. Not exactly sure how much the output was, but I want to say I increased it 1 stop. So it became from this exposure to just focus on the face to this exposure. Here's 2 closer examples of that light setup, and then here is the light setup. You guys can see exactly how the light was positioned for both of those lights. The very last photo examples that I have of exposing for the ambient, then adding flash, are actually from a photo shoot back in 2017 with the model by the name of Marina from San Antonio. And we actually took a lot of different examples of the light off and the light on, which is exactly what exposing for the ambient, and then adding flash is. So let me go ahead and just show you guys those really quickly, and then we'll be done. Here's a shot with just the ambient exposed. It's at 1/8,000th of a second, f1.4 at ISO 100, and I chose these settings because of how strong the sun was that day. It was very, very bright, so there was bright highlights on her shoulder and highlights on the ground. So I did expose the shot like this, and then I added the flash, and it resulted in this exposure. Here's another example with the exact same settings, but now I'm in a shaded area, and since I'm in a shaded area, there's not a lot of light there, so now the exposure at the same settings is very, very dark compared to how it looked like in this shot here. So now that I exposed for the ambient, and I actually wanted this exposure here, I wanted it to look kind of like a studio, so I took this shot here with just the ambient like that, and then I added the flash, and it created this shot here. This is another shaded area, but it actually is less shaded than the previous one. This shot here, there isn't really a lot of light coming through, and there was a lot more light here. So what I wanted to do was go for a more natural looking shot. So I'm at 1/500th of a second, ISO 100 at f1.4. And then this is how the shot looks like without any lighting, artificial lighting. And then I added my flash, and that's how it looked like now. And that's pretty much it for this video. It's always gonna be, again, exposed for the ambient, then add flash. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll answer as soon as possible. Take care, guys.